achieve, we gain that assurance from. 7.16 just points out the key targeted outcomes that we're looking to achieve. So when you look at the action plan, it sets out the areas that we are looking to make sure we are ensuring, because obviously we're identifying significant risks. It's useful to point out exactly what those risks are, what we're trying to achieve in managing those risks as part of that. So you have the overarching report, A, AGS, B, Code of Corporate Governance, and C, the action plan from the previous year. Happy to take any questions around that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Lots to consider there. Any thoughts, comments, questions on it? Kate?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I do have some comments. I am struggling, in particular, with Appendix A in terms of respecting the rule of the law. I did put a question to Cabinet a couple of weeks ago around a recent. It's not actually a change in the law. It's a confirmation of the law. So on the 16th of April, the Supreme Court unanimously agreed that terms man, woman, and sex in the Equality Act refer to biological sex. So holding a gender recognition certificate doesn't change sex for the purposes of the Equality Act. So the ruling protects single-sex spaces, as well as continued protection for trans people under the Equality Act. And there is a point why I'm making this point. I'll slightly complicated. Basically, my question was, is the council reviewing its policies and procedures in light of this to ensure that it complies with the law? The answer I got back was that the council is going to wait for the Equality and Human Rights Commission, the EHRC, to issue guidance. That's in an unspecified period of time. We don't know when that guidance is coming. My concern is that with this governance statement is that on page 9, point C, you refer to the health and safety at work regulations and how failing to adhere to the law puts the council at risk of costly repercussions and prosecutions, which I agree with. The provision of single-sex toilets falls under the health and safety at work regulations. And so our leader gave me the answer a couple of weeks ago saying that she is waiting to apply the regulations that are within this government's structure. That there are other issues in that the EHRC interim report, which was quoted, and any following reports, does not apply to employers. So it's not about employment or the health and safety at work regulations. So there's no need to wait for this legislation. And the EHRC itself had told people not to pause. They have said, do not wait for guidance, go ahead to implement the law. This isn't a new law. The problem is that we've been applying the law. Many organisations have been applying the law wrongly. So that means there's a possibility of retrospective claims, and also there are other organisations saying they're going to wait for this guidance. They are now being sent letters for action, which is the pre-legal point to which, with the intention that they will be taken to court. And there are funds available for people publicly who might want to make a claim who can't afford to make a claim. So I don't believe that this council is going to be immune to claims in this area. I did make it clear lots of other organisations are acting now. They're doing things. I personally don't believe the legislation is confusing, and they're going ahead and implementing the law. My supplementary question was, have the council asked for specialist legal advice in this area? And also, have we asked our insurers that they were happy for us to wait? And the response at that time was that no advice had been taken. I am concerned about the culture of the council on this issue. I know the audit committee has to deal with culture. as well. We've talked about culture. I've struggled to get an answer so far about what our current policy is on single-sex toilets and changing rooms, for example, which should be straightforward in my opinion. I've been concerned about some of the internal messages to staff regarding the Supreme Court ruling. I think basically there's a range of protected characteristics involved in this. There are trans people, and you know, they have been largely misled by a lot of organisations into what the law is. There are also women who are affected by this under the protected characteristic of sex, who perhaps haven't had access to single-sex spaces in the way they should have done. And there's also the protected characteristic of belief. And I mention this because you have the belief, you're allowed to have the belief that sex is real, which now aligns with the law. And yet social workers have been sacked for that belief and disciplined by Social Work England wrongfully. They've won tribunals for you know, sharing petitions about wanting to have single-sex sports, for example. And social workers, I believe, are probably scared of speaking out about this issue for fear of action that may be taken against them as a result of that. And so the protected characteristic of belief is there, and also sexual orientation. The ruling found that people had the right to be attracted to their opposite sex, and lots of lesbians campaigned hard for this right, rather than the being attracted to a certificate of sex. So I emailed our chief executive a few weeks ago and asked if I could meet to discuss this. I am worried about some of the internal messaging that might suggest bias and might help future claims. I haven't had a response from our chief executive, and I wonder whether it's an area that the audit committee could look at or ask to be looked at, because I think we're putting ourselves at risk if we do not implement the law.
For my part, I understand the point made, and I was there at the cabinet when you asked your question. It seems to me that the person probably who needs to advise from the council on this is the head of legal, is Tim Collard. From a legal point of view, does that Supreme Court ruling now mean the council, to protect itself from legal challenges, needs to implement certain changes? And I don't know. I think he's the person that needs to advise. You don't think so? But I think in terms of the corporate governance statement, it's about respecting the rule of law, and that is in this council interpreted and for us and advised on us by our head of legal, who would advise us what the law is and what we need to do to protect our position. But any views from any other members?
Yeah, I echo Kate's comments. Not in that much detail, you're a lot more up to speed on the subject to me, but I listened to the cabinet meeting and I was quite surprised by the answer that the question got. What I believe the council should be doing is implementing what is quite a straightforward High Court ruling and implementing them laws and then taking advice, not doing nothing, waiting for advice. Because as Kate said, we could find ourselves in some really tricky legal issues. As I said, the law, the Supreme High Court ruling is very, very clear. So for me, there's no reason why we shouldn't be implementing them rules and then taking advice.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, the EHRC's advice to employers is, if there is confusion, to seek external advice. But legal advice, it's a complex area of law. What I've tried to do is to raise my concerns, possibly about issue of culture. I mean, I've been trying to find out what our policy is, and I mean, maybe I'll find out, but I haven't got that yet. Yeah, I work for a charity. We have all our policies and procedures in one place, and we email them to staff if there's an issue. I am concerned that I raised the issue that the council may be putting itself, like, I don't want to do this in public, I'll be honest. I wanted to talk to the chief exec. He hasn't replied to my email. I've probably emailed the chief executive in 6 years of being a councillor less than 10 times. He's always got back to me. He hasn't replied to me. I realise this is a difficult issue. I realise there's a lot of heat in it, but there's law as well, and I do worry that there's an issue. There's a whole load of, we've had to take down progress pride flags because we didn't get planning permission for them. I think there's confusion within the council on this issue, and I think for everybody, for trans people, for women, for gay and lesbian people, for people with belief, I think we just need to be clear, and I feel like I'm getting roadblocks when I'm raising this issue.
It's obviously a issue that affects many areas of the council. One of those areas is the audit committee, which we're concerned with. I think, in my mind, it is a matter of, are we complying with the law as we now understand it? And I think you're saying we're not. I think from the audit point of view, the only way around that is to invite the head of legal to come, and you can ask questions of whether we sought external advice or whatever. But I don't think I or any of us can determine what the law is about hearing from our head of legal. So that would be my feelings as to how we should move forward on it. But James,
yeah, I mean, all I'd say is that this issue is being worked through. So I can't comment on why you haven't received a response yet, but what I can unequivocally say is that advice is being sought internally in terms of what we need to do, how we need to interpret this, and what steps we need to take, A, to manage the risk, and B, to ensure that we're complying with law. That there is a question about what the role of audit committee would be within that. So I have no problem whatsoever with audit committee considering whatever is the right part of that, and just discussing the kind of the legality of it or the interpretation of it is not really a role for the audit committee. So what I'll do is I will go back and I will ensure that a response is sent as soon as possible in relation to the questions that are being received, and then I will speak with Katie and Barry, and we'll check through the internal process that's being worked through, and if we have any concerns about that, we can bring those to your attention, and then you can consider whether audit committee we should have a conversation about that. Just one very, very small technical thing is all of these conversations are post the AGS. Actually produced post 31st of March in terms of those further conversations. So I just want